With half the department out with swine flu, the overworked detectives of the 12th precinct have to deal with old people, shots, and a werewolf. Battle of the Network shows. Join Rick Brooks and Mike Kogel as they explore the TV of the 70s and 80s through hand-picked episodes of their favorite and not-so-favorite series. Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of Battle of the Network shows. I'm Rick here with Mike.
Hey.
And we've got a special episode today because we're going to be going over one of the shows that won in our Season 5 viewer choice poll. Today we're looking at the workplace sitcom winner, and that is Barney Miller. And Barney edged Benson and WKRP in Cincinnati. Both of the runners-up are fine shows, and I think we'll get to them at some point in the future. But for this season, it's Barney Miller time.
Isn't it always Barney Miller time?
Maybe it should be. Maybe it should be.
Now, I prefer to drink Lowenbrow.
Of course, yes.
While watching Barney Miller.
Yeah. You don't have any cognitive dissonance doing that, or?
I don't think so.
Feels right?
Yeah, it feels right.
That's good.
Yeah.
I want to remind everybody that if you ever want to drop us a line and suggest future episodes, topics for the show, feel free to do that. We'll be doing more polls again for next season's selection of shows, but we also love to take viewer requests, and we also love to hear from all the listeners. And in fact, we got an email through our mailbag at battleofthenetworkshows.com address, which you can use anytime. And this is from a listener of ours, John Hollum, who just discovered the show recently, and I thought I'd share some of the kind words he wrote to us, Mike, right now. He says, "Hello, Mike and Rick. I discovered your podcast recently and thought I'd drop you a line. In case you're wondering, I Googled 70s TV podcast, and there it was," which is good.
Yeah.
70s and 80s should be a good way to find us. I like that worked. He says, "I like your approach. You both have an obvious love and fondness for these shows while also recognizing some of the quirks that mark these shows as part of the past. I've been catching up with the first season and enjoyed the Incredible Hulk episode as well as the Lowenbrow show."
There you go.
I think those are two good episodes if you were starting with. Hopefully, John, you're still listening and catching up a bit, and maybe you're enjoying a Miller while you're listening to the Lowenbrow show. I don't know, but
yeah.
Either way, thanks for taking the time to write to us, and yeah, keep listening, tell your friends. And John also suggests, he says, "I hope you'll consider doing an episode on the Hardy Boys." He says, "I just finished the first season, and it seems like a perfect fit for your show. You've got that late 70s family hour tone, charming actors, and great guest stars, plus a terrific main title sequence." So I think there's a good possibility we could take a look at the Hardy Boys in the future.
Yeah, better possibility when it was still on Netflix. Wasn't it on Netflix?
It was. It was for quite a while.
Was Nancy Drew on there too?
Yeah, they had the Hardy Boys, Nancy Drew mysteries were abundant on Netflix, but the great Universal purge of several years ago has caused that to fade away. However, the series is complete on DVD, and I believe those episodes are around if you know where to look for them.
Okay.
So I think that's a pretty good, definitely one to put on our list for next season.
You put the opening of both of them, or just Nancy Drew on the Dynasty YouTube list?
Yes, I think it was a Nancy Drew episode.
Okay.
Because, of course, the star went on to, Pamela Sue Martin went on to play Emma, right, on Dynasty.
Fallon.
Or Fallon.
Replaced by Emma, yeah.
Yeah, sorry.
Well, understand it. But I enjoyed that opening. It had, if I remember right, it had like some sort of faux Nancy Drew book covers.
Yeah, that show was it kind of didn't last that long, but it was a pretty big deal back in the day, so I think we should definitely take a look at that. But, so thanks again, John, and again, mailbag at battleofthenetworkshows.com. You can also check out our Facebook page, Twitter, and Mike, we've got the Facebook group going, right?
Facebook group is now going. We'll probably have the Hardy Boys flying over in their airplane.
Flying by.
Yeah, we'll probably have our polls in multiple places, but among them would be the group there, which might lead to some discussion. I don't know.
Sure.
To see how the character of the group plays out. But we already had one poll there, in fact.
Yes, we did.
As of this recording. So
yeah. So go there, check it out. Discussions and maybe some sneak peeks at future episodes and all that stuff. Check it out on our Facebook group.
Battle of the Network shows, the group.
Yes. All right. Well, that's a lot of housekeeping for today. Should we get on to Barney Miller?
We should, yeah.
Right, and the episode that we chose was from the third season of Barney Miller, and it's called Werewolf. And this was the 6th episode of that third season. Premiered October 28th, 1976 at 8:30 p.m., a Thursday night, so just a few days before Halloween. Mm-hmm. And it was on ABC, as the show was on ABC for all 8 seasons. Mike, I don't know about you, but I'm always surprised to learn that Barney Miller was on 8 seasons. It didn't seem like it was on that long to me.
I guess I am, yeah. I honestly am not super familiar with the show. I knew it existed. I remember it being on in reruns at some point. It seemed like another one of those shows that adults watched,
right?
Which makes sense. And I've only really seen a few episodes here and there, random times. I don't know why, because I know from any episode I've seen and just the premise and everything, it's right up my alley. But I just haven't had the time, and it's not super available on streaming platforms right now. And a friend of the show, Amy, did loan me the season 1 DVD set, so I'll be diving into those. So, 8 seasons. That's a long time. I guess, it did have a spin-off, so that would indicate that it was successful.
Right.
Even if the spin-off Fish, I guess, that didn't last very long, did it?
No, and I think like a comedy for 4 or 5 seasons, I think, that's a pretty good run. And so many of the great sitcoms didn't really go more than 5 seasons. So when you get to, 5 or 6, that's pretty good. But 7 or 8, that seems like a pretty long run for a sitcom to me.
Yeah, and as the great Alan Sepinwall has told us, once a sitcom is in like 8 years, it's probably not going to surprise you much. Well, it's more like comfort food. Yeah,
and that's interesting because apparently the show went out on its own terms.
Good.
Like it was not, ABC was in no hurry to get rid of them, but series creator and showrunner Danny Arnold decided, well, we've had it.
Yeah.
And wanted to go out on top.
And I guess he was a bit temperamental.
Yeah, I think Ken Levine, who writes a blog, former Cheers MASH writer, and many other things, has an excellent blog and a podcast. He's said several times, he's talked about his limited experiences working with Danny Arnold, and he described him as almost bipolar, actually. Yeah. So he was a volatile personality, a perfectionist, but very passionate about his work and very committed to it, and by all accounts poured everything, spiritually, mentally, and physically into Barney Miller.
Wow.
And actually, something that's easy to forget, he was pretty much developed in the writing end. The first season of Bewitched was mostly the work of Danny Arnold.
I can see the similarities.
Yeah, of course. It seems like a natural progression, right? So, quite a career, and I think it seems like Danny Arnold is a revered and sort of like odd figure in TV comedy writing, partly because of his, the marathon taping sessions and the endless rewrites and the personality, the cigar chomping, that kind of thing, but also because just Barney Miller seems like a show that people in comedy just they appreciate Barney Miller.
Yeah.
It was never a huge commercial hit, but, it seemed like it did pretty consistently well in the ratings, mostly on Thursday nights on ABC. And again, 8 seasons and going out in your own terms, that's a good run.
Yeah. It definitely seems to be in that, something we've talked about before, the New York of the past. That's romanticized now by a lot of people, I think, that now that New York has to some extent been cleaned up, but it doesn't have any character, it's not the dirty New York, and the New York full of criminals and hookers and grifters, yeah, and crazy people, and everyone getting mugged.
Yeah.
From what you might want to see on a TV show, like a cop show or something, I can understand romanticizing that, and I can understand not being comfortable with gentrification. But does anybody really want to get mugged?
Yeah, that's a good question.
And I don't know enough about the cleaning up. Was it good for everyone, or was it a certain pushing people out of the city, sweeping it under the rug, or pushing them into another borough?
Right.
Making that the new hellhole. I don't know. Yeah. But I do find it interesting to see in the safe confines of a TV show or a movie.
Yeah.
It has does have a character to it.
Yeah, and we're talking about what like 1974 to 1982, something like in those years, which is definitely the glory years, for lack of a better word, of this phase of New York City.
Yeah.
And it definitely holds up. And if there is somebody that likes being mugged, they probably appeared on Barney Miller at some point as a character because
Right.
they did have all kinds of characters come in there. And I think they probably did do a storyline about that at one point. But your point is well taken, though.
Yeah.
And yeah, I never really watched Barney Miller either as a kid. I do remember it being in reruns, and my rerun experience was more New York centric than your, I dare say, more Southern centric. Like you got TBS years before I did.
Yeah.
And I had, was watching like a lot of the New York stations.
Right. We did, at some point on cable, we had WOR.
Yeah. And then WR was very New York.
Yeah.
I guess it was technically Secaucus, New Jersey.
Right.
Which I always was fascinated by the overlap between New Jersey and New York. But that's a different story. But
right.
Yeah, Barney Miller was not something that I really got into until I think it was WGN showed it. They had like a retro throwback kind of block, and they started showing like all the episodes, and I really was starting to DVR them, and that's when I really watched probably more Barney Miller than I ever had before.
Okay.
It was much spottier then. One of my strongest memories of Barney Miller is I was in a, not to brag or anything, an advanced placement history class in high school, but it was like a lecture format. And towards the end of the year, it was kind of, when teachers were all done with a test, teachers bring in films, videos. So our teacher, he brought in a TV VCR and just showed Barney Miller one day. And
to show you what New York was like only a few 10, 15 years before you were.
Yeah, well,
give you some modern history, right?
I don't recall him doing any commentary on it, but it just seemed like, looking back, it's like, well, this is the kind of show that maybe a left-leaning history professor would enjoy.
Yeah.
Because it's got that humanistic bent, and a lot of the episodes are kind of like about the system and like forces and stuff like that, but not losing sight of the individuals involved. So I just kind of thought it was funny that, okay, well, he likes Barney Miller, and I don't remember what episode he showed us, but that just seemed like, oh, okay, that figures. I got no problem with that.
I definitely don't remember that showing up on the AP history test.
You didn't, there was no.
It was not part of one of the essay choices.
That's unfortunate. Hopefully that you at least had Sergeant Bilko on your AP history test.
Okay. Yeah. I wouldn't have trusted that the questions on that that might have been rigged.
Yeah, I think so. So no, I didn't have to write an essay or anything about it, but maybe in some small way that class prepared me for today's podcast. We'll see. So Barney Miller, for me, I enjoy it when I watch it, but it's not, to me, it's not like not necessarily in quality, it's not like an A+ show to me in terms of appeal. It's like a solid show that when I sit down and watch it, I enjoy it. I think, and you say you haven't seen a lot of it, but my opinion is it's the kind of show that really, it grows on you, and I think the more you sit down and watch it, it just, the more you like it. I think you kind of get involved more with the characters because it's so much of it is character-based humor that I think extended exposure to the series definitely helps appreciate it, would be my opinion. But
that's interesting because I was thinking, watching this episode, that it had a quality of being able to, like, I felt comfortable in it without really knowing the characters.
Interesting.
That the characters were formed enough that,
right.
Like, I got the basic feeling of their camaraderie and kind of who they were. And maybe just, some of it was actual details, like, okay, besides Fish, Abe Vigoda's character being old, that he's not entirely happy being married.
Yeah.
Things like that. But I imagine, like most sitcoms, the more you spend time with it,
well,
the more you know.
Let me put it this way: I don't think that I don't think we're necessarily disagreeing, but I would say I think it's easy to step in and understand what the show's about, but in my opinion, I think the funnier it gets, the more you watch it. Like, I was kind of revisiting it for the podcast and watching an episode or two, and it didn't strike me right away as being particularly funny.
Yeah.
I mean, it was funny, but not like ha-ha funny until I kind of got into it a little bit more, and I think this episode is one of the more well-received episodes, and I do think it was probably a little bit more outright funny than some of the other ones. But to me, it's always been kind of a show that I appreciate more than I actually will sit and watch and just laugh at.
Okay.
However, I'm sure there's a lot of people that would disagree with me and think it's one of the funniest shows of all time.
Yeah.
I'm not saying it's not funny. I just think it takes a while for me to get into it and appreciate some of the comedy.
Yeah. Your history teacher, for one, would disagree with you.
I think he would, but he also agreed with my take on the Holt-Smooley tariffs of the 19th century. So, there's always going to be some disagreements between the two of us.
He disagreed with you. Oh, yeah. Maybe we can get him on the show to explain tariffs.
Perhaps, yeah. If you're listening and you'd like us to, suggest another show, as we mentioned, feel free to reach out to us. Mailbag at battleofthenetworkshows.com.
Or if you, the listeners in general, would like us to do a show on tariffs as portrayed in television, let us know.
Maybe we can reach out to the economist from the Tom Snyder show, and he could stop talking about the gold standard long enough to delve into tariffs.
I'm sure he knows a thing or two.
Yeah,
about tariffs.
But he does. One more thing I wanted to mention before we get into the mechanics of this episode is Barney Miller's competition that night were the Waltons on CBS.
Oh, powerhouse.
And one of our favorite, but never really fully talked about shows on the podcast, Gemini Man.
Oh.
NBC.
So I'm just going to guess, at least for that half hour, Waltons was number 1, Barney Miller was number 2, and Gemini Man was number 3.
I don't know that with 100% certainty, but I think that's a safe bet.
And possibly whatever was on PBS was number 3.
Yes. Yep. I think you're right. Yeah. I think there was a test pattern on channel 38 that had that beat Gemini Man.
Right.
So it's just an interesting juxtaposition. Clearly something for everybody that night. I mean, It seemed like this is another thing that I like thinking about when we do these is just thinking about essentially 3 choices: the networks, and you've got the Waltons, a family drama, Gemini Man, a sci-fi action kind of show, and Barney Miller.
Right.
And you would think that all 3 are aimed at totally different audiences, yet still sort of broad audiences, but different parts of the viewership, to be sure.
So it was on at 8 or 8:30?
Barney Miller was on at 8:30.
Boy, it seems like a 9 o'clock show to me.
It does, and actually, I think later on it did move to 9 o'clock.
Okay.
It was like a Thursday 9 o'clock, I think, for most of its run, for the majority of its run, and that feels right, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, and then, we can get into other things. Should we mention the cast?
Yeah.
A little bit. Hang on. So, of course, the suave, the multi-talented Hal Linden as Barney.
Yes, Hal Linden, who appeared or not appeared in one of our other episodes when we talked about something we'd like to watch. Correct? The Dallas, the Most Beautiful Girls in Texas special that he hosted, which is still, I think that's a callback to our first season, I believe.
Right, yeah.
And I think we discussed Hal Linden a little bit there, but this was a little bit more famous work of his than that Dallas Cowboys cheerleader special. But
I have a Hal Linden question. I'll go ahead and ask it now.
Yeah, sure.
If he had been given the chance in say the 70s, even possibly before this, let's say, or around this time,
okay,
would he have been a better Tony Stark or Stephen Strange?
Oh, excellent question.
Or J. Jonah Jameson, but I don't think his personality, temperament doesn't seem to fit that as much.
He's a good enough actor. He could do J. Jonah Jameson, but I'm going to rule him out because I don't necessarily want to see that.
Yeah.
Just because I like Hal Linden so much.
Right.
And J. Jonah in a different way. Before I answer that, let me say that I first like the way that I said sure when you said you wanted to ask a question, like I'm a Hal Linden expert. I'm far from a Hal Linden expert. I'm just an amateur Hal Lindenologist like the rest of us.
Right, yeah.
I like the idea of him doing Doctor Strange right away.
That's my God, partly because his hair, at least in Barney Miller, he has a mix of gray and black, but
that might be prejudicing me a little bit.
But he's also suave.
Well, remember too that Hal Linden had a show that magician, that Black's Magic show, with.
I watched that one.
With Harry Potter, really?
Yeah.
I'd love to see that one again. I remember the commercials for that, but I don't think I ever watched it.
Harry Morgan, yeah.
Yeah.
Harry Potter.
Oh, did I say Harry Potter? I meant Colonel Potter.
Wow.
That was some real magic there. Harry Morgan is he who shall not be named correctly in my world, apparently.
Yeah, he did play a magician. I would probably go Doctor Strange too, but I think he could have done either pretty well, just based on Well, partly his again his sort of acting, but I mean he has the look
Yeah.
without a lot of work.
Right.
He's got that mustache, That's pretty much the mustache.
Yeah. I'm intrigued by the idea of a 1970s Iron Man with Hal Linden in the title role. It could work.
Yeah.
With Lou Gossett Jr. as Rhodey.
Yeah, was he around? That character around by then?
Well, he was around when the alcoholic storyline started, and that was early 80s.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. It could. Yeah.
He wasn't as big back at this time as he is now because of the movies, though.
You could have probably used in the Doctor Strange. You could have just used some of the cast here.
Yeah.
Jack Sue as Wong.
Yeah.
I don't know. That's the only one I can think of. But
Yeah. I'm thinking, and partly because she played Pepper on Police One, but Angie Dickinson as Pepper Potts
okay.
might have worked at this time. So yeah, who would Steve Landesberg have been in the Iron Man? Maybe he could be a villain.
Yeah, he could be a sardonic villain.
Yeah.
I don't know Iron Man's rogues gallery well enough to.
Yeah, I mean you've got Mandarin and
Yeah.
Crimson Dynamo.
Right.
Who was it? Mickey Rourke played in the movie.
Whiplash.
Yeah. Not much to Whiplash.
No.
Steve Landesberg, I think, is better than Whiplash.
Yeah. Steve Landesberg maybe could have been. I don't know if they could have brought Ben Urich into the.
Oh, that would be
this Iron Man TV show.
I love that. Yep. There you go. Wojo is Happy.
Yep.
Okay, we got something here.
Yep. Let's get the time machine. It'd be great because he would hardly ever be Iron Man.
Right.
They would have no way to really accomplish that.
I know. Yeah. It would just be them hanging around, talking.
Right.
Yeah, I'd be okay with that. I think.
I mean, frankly, the Iron Man movies today, the appeal is Robert Downey Jr. It's not
so much.
I mean, the suit is cool or whatever, but if it were just a suit, no one would be. Well, people would still be going because people go to Transformers movies, but
right. Yeah.
All right.
We were talking about the cast.
Yes, the cast. Hal Linden, also, of course, known for his love of ballroom dancing.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah.
Abe Vigoda, we mentioned from Fish, and long-standing Punchline in various places until, well, he actually did die.
Yeah, he did.
Yeah.
He did.
Max Gale, you mentioned, is Wojo, or he told us how to say it, but I remember Wojowitz?
Wojciechowicz.
Wojciechowicz.
I believe, yes.
Just like it's spelled.
Yeah.
And what's your general take on his character? Is he a little dumb? Is that his deal?
Wojo?
Yeah.
I think maybe naive would be better.
Okay.
More guileless,
Okay.
perhaps. He seems like more of actually kind of like the all-American, maybe like a jock or like a Midwestern kind of appeal that sort of puts him at odds with everybody else.
Okay.
So maybe more naive than.
Yeah.
He had some storylines later, I know, that sort of emphasized that maybe more. That's what my take would be.
The small-town kid in the big city.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Yeah.
He's an ex-Marine, we know that.
Yeah.
Okay. And Ron Glass as Detective Harris.
Yeah.
Another suave.
The fashion plate of the 12th precinct.
Right. Gotta say, he went to the same college I did. Different time. And I did meet him once, but it's not a brush with fame. Not if you have to pay to get him to sign an autograph.
Did he teach AP history at your college?
No.
Too bad.
In fact, because he grew up in the town where my college was, and when I told him I went there, he was like, why? Why would anyone go there? He was very nice.
Yeah, Ron Glass is.
His handler was trying to get me. There was no one in line, but his handler was trying to get me out of there.
Trying to move you along?
And he was actually, kept asking me questions.
Ron Glass was?
Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah, so it was nice. But, at least in this one, Jack Sue is Yamana?
Yeah, Nick Yamana. Mm-hmm.
Right. I guess one of the famous things about him is he died while the show was on. I don't know if it was literally on when he died, but
yes,
during the run, and they did an episode.
Like a tribute to him.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was very heartfelt and I think pretty unusual for a primetime show to do something like that, but good on them for doing it.
Yeah. You mentioned Steve Landesberg. Unfortunately, he didn't show up in this episode.
intellectual Arthur Dietrich. And yeah, he joined the cast later and was kind of a semi-regular at this point, I believe. And then in the next season and beyond, he would become more of a regular.
Yeah.
Like an actual regular.
Right. Yeah. Okay.
Gregory Sierra in the first season is Chano was sort of their Latino representative, and he was, I think, only in the first season.
Okay. And there was a woman detective who was kind of around for the first couple of seasons, but not much.
There were several, yes. There was Wentworth, who was played by BOTNS fave Linda Lavin.
Ah.
Yeah, she was a recurring character for a couple of years, too.
Yeah.
And also, one of the more fondly remembered characters not in this episode was James Gregory as Deputy Inspector Luger, who often comes in and does some soliloquies and kind of annoys everybody and does pretty much a master class in scene stealing every time he's out there.
Yeah, you definitely need that kind of character in a workplace sitcom. In general, I mean, I guess if you consider Cheers a workplace sitcom, it didn't really have much of that.
No, certainly not at first.
I guess when Kirstie Alley, she was a little bit. But
yeah, I got more of that a little bit, And then when Cheers kind of went corporate, but at the beginning, it was definitely didn't have that. Kind of more like in WKRP had Gordon Jump's character, who was sort of a hapless boss, and then,
but Mother,
right? She really was running the show,
yeah.
So Luger's kind of like sort of seems out of it, but he is Barney's superior. So
right. Should we get into the werewolf?
Yeah. Why don't we? I could. Would you like me to start us off with? I mean, there's not a whole lot of plot. I mean, there's multiple things going on.
Yeah. Half the police are out with swine flu.
Yeah.
So everyone is they're in the middle of a really long shift, and I think doing extra work.
Right. That was a big thing back in the 70s, swine flu.
Swine flu, yeah. Is that still around?
It is, I believe, but I don't know if they call it swine flu.
Right.
I mean, there's different strains of it. There's with now initials and numbers, and it kind of loses the charm of good old swine flu.
Yeah. It's definitely more menacing than avian flu.
I agree. Yes, it is. Yes, it is. At least from the sound of it.
I guess because swine has multiple meanings, too.
True. You
don't call someone an avian.
No, you don't.
What an avian that guy is.
Yeah, I've never heard it.
No. So what else is going on?
Well, as I mentioned, the detectives are all tired, and because of the swine flu, they're going to have a nurse come in and administer shots to everybody to protect them. I guess the other thing, they're running out of coffee. They're out of coffee, which is a big deal. Yeah. That's crippling for the precinct.
Right, and that is Yamana's territory?
Yeah, no, I guess he's notorious for his terrible coffee, but I guess it's better to have terrible coffee than no coffee at all.
Right.
True of many things in life, but especially with coffee. Yeah. Fish fields a call that comes into the office, and it's basically a man is asking for somebody to come pick him up because he feels he's a threat to society, he feels he's a threat to everybody.
Yeah.
He feels he's a werewolf.
Right.
Probably happened more in New York in the 70s than we might think, actually.
Yeah.
I don't know if this was ripped from the headlines, but maybe it was. The other sort of lesser storyline that's going on here is there's an old couple, like tourists, that get held at gunpoint. So they get their ritual mugging. Right. And they come in and press charges.
The cab they're in is... So you also get your ritual car theft.
Yeah.
The driver mugs them, but he's stolen the cab.
Right.
For the purpose of mugging.
And I think one of them says that the driver was so nice, and somebody says, well, that should have tipped you off. Right. So you get jokes about, taxi drivers in 1970s. And
you get
muggings in 1970s.
Carl Malden traveler check joke.
Oh, yeah. So that sets up the stage for, I guess they send Harris and Wojo to go pick up this guy. Yeah. Kopechne is his name.
Yeah.
And they went up on a big chase to get him, and Harris comes back anxious because he's a $250 suit. He's got stains all over it.
Yeah.
Which always strikes me as funny that a guy worried about his suit is going out and getting perps and stuff. And
well, I think he does say something about he didn't become a detective so he could, crawl around in the grass or something like. I guess he thinks his detective will keep him clean.
Yeah, right. He doesn't expect to be like a patrolman.
Yeah, doing grunt work.
In fact, later he's like an aspiring writer, and that becomes a big part of his character too later on the show. His ambition. Definitely has ambitions beyond just being a police detective as well. But he's upset mainly about that.
Right. But then he gets distracted.
Yes, by the nurse.
The nurse, yeah.
And that's actually a good bit of acting because he's whining about that, and then he segues right into hitting on the nurse.
Yeah.
Like almost as soon as he sees her.
Yeah. He got a couple good like little mini rants in.
Yeah.
There was that one, and then earlier when they were going out, Yamana was asking him to get more coffee.
Yeah, while he's out.
And he went on this rant about, I gotta chase down this psychopath and this and that, and the punchline was, I was just like, write it down, man.
Yeah. It was great.
Yeah.
The delivery of that was fantastic.
Yeah. So yeah, I guess the main thing is this guy thinking he's a werewolf.
Right, and one thing I wanted to kind of spotlight here, speaking of great acting and great reactions, is I think before they bring him upstairs to the second floor, you hear him howling.
Right.
And howling, and Barney just goes, "What the hell is that?" You know, and the look in his face, it's just so genuine and everything. I laughed out loud for some reason watching that. It was like, oh, that was a great reaction.
Right, and then I think Harris says, "Oh, that's a werewolf," and he's kind of looking at him. Even after that, it's like his mouth is hanging open.
Yeah, that was good.
Yeah, and the guy playing the werewolf is Kenneth Teagar, who's one of those recognizable faces from the million guest shots on things.
Yes, including multiple guest shots on Barney Miller.
Right.
And that was something that the show did quite often.
Yeah.
I think the old lady was on before, or one of the old couple that was held up was on again or before too. So that was something that Barney Miller did a lot, recycle these kind of actors, which I like that. It's just kind of a part of the charm of the show, I think.
Yeah.
Is that they had this cast of people that they liked and kept using.
Yeah, and he's definitely gets his paycheck.
Yeah.
In this one.
He does.
Yeah, so this guy thinks he's a werewolf. He's Romanian descent.
Yeah. He's
born on a full moon.
Yeah, he's got the curse.
Yeah. No one suspects it down at the shipyard or wherever he works.
Yeah. Well, when you either are cursed by a werewolf or you're not.
Right.
And I guess you would know. I mean, who are we to judge?
I'm certainly not judging.
I'm not one to judge.
No.
As we find out a little bit later, Barney's is one to judge. I don't think Barney's really buying it.
No. Everyone else is a little...
Yeah.
Maybe.
Well, the guy's acting kind of funny.
He is acting kind of funny.
It is a full moon.
It is a full moon, and the closer it gets to midnight,
yeah,
the weirder he gets.
And that's something I like too. Is they put him? They got these. We sort of talked about the look of 70s New York.
Yeah,
it's really encapsulated in this small set. And I think in this episode, right, you only see that room. You don't even see Barney's office, which you sometimes see. But most of the episodes are just in this one little like stage kind of setting.
Yeah,
and it is just crammed with stuff. There's papers and files, and it doesn't look slovenly.
No,
but it looks
dirty.
Worked in, yeah. It looks dirty and busy.
Yeah.
And a lot of times they'll plunk somebody kind of in the middle of the set in this little holding cell they have, and then you have like the characters interact with everybody that's on duty, which I always kind of like that dynamic.
Yeah, because it's this open thing. Like everyone's in everybody's business.
Yeah.
And it works well for that. I mean, in a way, like the Good Times set, everybody's kind of always there. It is a little bigger because, of course, it has a jail cell in it. But,
yeah.
But you do get that, and you get that people not directly involved with the thing can make wisecracks.
Right. And do you can have like the prisoners doing like a Greek chorus kind of thing sometimes.
Yeah.
Talking about things that the detectives are talking to each other about.
Right. But it feels very alive that way. Like sometimes we've talked about before that you can have that same kind of thing, and it feels like people are just standing over in their area waiting for when the camera cuts to them to make their joke, like Night Court.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And I think I feel like not just because one of the writers on this was Reinhold Weege of Night Court fame, but I feel like they're probably in the same universe. Definitely in the same New York.
Yeah.
And I could see people from, this precinct being sent to that Night Court.
That's a good point. I like that. Yeah.
But at the same time, that had that sort of stagey feel. Mm-hmm. Even though everybody was in the same room, they would cut over to Bull or whatever.
Yes.
Making a comment or a weird face.
Yeah, that was more. It was definitely more of like that, multi-camera kind of sitcom rhythm feel.
Yeah.
Whereas this one, and that's actually something that I think I'd read this a long time ago, but I really forgot all about it until, we were looking at this show, was that, it came up several times that at the beginning Barney Miller was taped before a live studio audience, but then they stopped it because the way Danny Arnold worked, the episodes would go on until 2:33 in the morning, and they eventually just got rid of the studio audience because the taping sessions were too long. Or he specifically wanted to do certain kind of scenes without the audience and everything, and they just decided to bag it, and so they didn't even. Although it totally looks like a show, that's would be filmed before a studio audience. Like this one, I think maybe was, and then it was more like sometime in this season, maybe a transition or the second. I'm not sure when, but.
I'd be curious to compare, because it seems like this is the kind of show that might, on occasion, benefit from a live audience, in the sense that something, we would get an extended laugh or something.
Right.
A ridiculous thing, or right. I haven't seen it, but there's the famous episode where Yamana gets high or something.
Yeah.
On evidence.
The hash episode.
The hash episode. Yeah.
Well, and you've got actors that have stage training, as opposed to stand-up comedy training.
Yeah.
Or, as opposed to just plunking people into the thing. I think you had actors that probably had more serious actor training would probably respond very well to a live audience.
Yeah, I guess it's a trade-off.
Yeah.
Perfection.
Yeah.
Versus that, yeah. This definitely felt like it had an audience. I think maybe just like when the werewolf guy is going nuts and things like that.
Right.
Just the reactions seemed alive.
And that's a great scene is, when the werewolf thinks he's turning and actually says it, and kind of Yamana is just sitting there, and just the way he said, Barney, just a couple times.
Keeps freaking out. Barney.
Yeah. I mean, that was just great.
And because at some point he's alone.
Yeah.
Like Harris goes out to find Barney.
Right.
And then Barney comes in and he just, shut up.
Yeah. He says, like, this is a police station, not a horror movie.
Yeah.
He's having none of it.
Yeah.
Which is good.
And then the other thing is Wojo being afraid of needles.
Yes.
I don't even he's afraid. I guess he is, but he knows he'll faint.
Right. He doesn't like needles, which I guess causes the fainting.
Yeah.
And it seems like it's almost more the humiliation of fainting than the actual needle that bothers him, right?
Right. Yeah. And Barney's just like, you got to get it.
Yeah.
So he finally does. He goes in the back in Barney's office and gets the shot and does faint.
Yeah.
But Barney looks out after him and, tells the other guys don't make any jokes.
Right.
Yeah.
So talk about the issues on the show, the anti-vax movement, decades ahead of time, anticipated by Barney Miller, way ahead of its time.
Right.
Yeah. And when Wojo faints, he does get kind of a smirk, at least, I think, from Harris.
Yeah.
Although he's kind of got a chip in his shoulder right away. And
Yeah.
preemptively says, don't say anything about it.
Right.
But he and Yamana are snickering about it.
Yeah. And Yamana kind of gets one. So Harris is, hitting on the nurse the whole time, and I don't know. She seems indifferent, I guess.
Yeah.
Although he goes around the rest of the precinct with her, helps out. And when he asks her out, she's said no, she's getting engaged to a Dr. Friedman, or maybe a Dr. Engelbert, I think.
Yeah. She hasn't.
Basically a Jewish doctor.
She hasn't decided yet.
Yeah. And Harris confides in Yamana about that, and later Yamana gets in a little zinger about that.
Right. Which is kind of like, that's another interesting thing about the show. It certainly didn't shy away from ethnic jokes.
Yeah.
You get the Polish jokes about Wojo a lot of times, and Yamana, there's 3 or 4 about his, Japanese heritage in this episode alone.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of that going on. But that was 1970s TV. It wasn't a big deal. It was kind of...
Yeah.
It almost feels like it would have been odd not to mention it. And especially, I think that's part of the camaraderie of the cops, too. I mean, they're kind of busting at each other and kind of like everything's fair game, that kind of deal.
Yeah.
It did feel a little weird, the nurse making that joke. That one seemed a little...
Yeah.
Because it's almost... And I don't even necessarily think it's like with our modern sensibility looking back. It's kind of like, well, these white guys writing this joke about a black nurse marrying a Jewish doctor.
Yeah.
It just seemed like kind of weird, and it seemed, unless you maybe you could do the interpretation that the nurse is just saying that to be sarcastic and
Right.
just totally putting them on.
You could also maybe look at it and say they might have just written it as a nurse, and then because of convention at the time, well, if Harris, who's black, is hitting on her, then she has to be black because people are still uncomfortable with that.
True, but if part of the story was for Harris to be hitting on the nurse the whole time, I mean, they probably would have thought that from the beginning, you would think.
Yeah, I don't know which came first.
Yeah.
I guess so. But I was okay with that. I like the one she made about Yamana asking him if he had been jaundiced.
Oh, yeah.
I thought that was like...
That was weird, too. Yeah, that was... I've seen that in a couple of episodes. I think just recently I've seen like similar jokes about his skin color come up, and that's how they rolled back in 1970.
I guess
76.
So. Yeah, didn't really fly with me. But I have a couple other thoughts. One, like, what do you think of Barney as a boss?
I like Barney as a boss.
Yeah, me too.
I think he's very capable. I think one of the recurring themes of the series is him trying to get a promotion and getting passed over many times. He almost seems overqualified because he is sensible, but he's not just I think the show, I think Barney Miller shows him, Barney Miller the character, as not just a good cop, but he's good at handling his squad and handling his people, and that I respect that.
Yeah, he seems to understand them and be respectful to them.
Yeah.
And I do, again, it's part of that, the way the set is and stuff, that he's kind of a lot of, at least this episode, most of the time, like out there, like right in the mix.
Right.
He's
not just burying his nose in paperwork or making paper airplanes. And he's going out and interacting with the citizens, and he's good at that too.
Yeah.
He knows how to interact with the werewolf. He knows what that needs. He knows how to interact with the elderly couple that's been victimized.
Yeah.
He's just a good spokesman for the department, as well as being a good police captain.
Yeah. And it's clear from the opening credits that he's still in touch with the common man in blue too.
Ah, yes.
The little shot of him, he's walking into the precinct, stops to talk to a couple uniformed cops, and then, of course, gives a big freeze frame laugh.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good point.
That's good to see.
Yeah, he's clearly, and I think that's actually true. He seems to have the respect of everybody. They all look up to him.
Yeah.
And he's not a typical cartoonish superior. Luger is more of that role, but Barney, I think, has the respect of everybody on the force.
And even though he's is again cool and suave, he has a little bit of a New York edge to him. Mm-hmm. I like that.
Yeah.
And I like that he's confident enough to wear a pink shirt in 1970, whatever.
That's another good point. Yes.
He's fairly fashionable.
Is it pink or is it salmon?
Oh, I'm like.
I think Barney would be comfortable saying it's pink.
Yeah. And maybe he's just with the times.
Yeah. He's the kind of guy, I mean, I wouldn't say he's unflappable, but he keeps his cool when he has to.
Right, yeah.
And in 1970s New York and Manhattan or Greenwich Village, whatever it is, that's probably a good quality to have.
Yeah. And the other thought I had, which is maybe a little more critical, it seems like Yamana and Fish might be a little too much on the same sort of comedic wavelength.
That's an
very
interesting point.
Slow,
deadpan,
tired, and some of that might have been this episode in particular, but definitely similar.
Yeah, I was actually thinking about that myself. How the show has this big deadpan sensibility, and it's particularly those two. Mm-hmm. And I mean, Wojo is definitely different, but even like Harris sometimes has kind of a drier humor, and then Lannisberg, when he's on, has that kind of dry delivery.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think that's a valid point.
I mean, I like deadpan. But...
Yeah. I mean, I think maybe that's why, I'm just speculating, maybe that's why they played up the ethnic humor with Yamana to kind of give him something to distinguish him. Mm-hmm. But, yeah, I do like both him and Abe Vigoda are great on the show. But, yeah, I can see that.
Was Fish a breakout character? I mean, why did he get...
It seems odd to spin him off of all the people on there.
Yeah. And the memory serves in the spin-off, he's retired and he's a bunch of like foster kids or something.
Right. His wife taken, including Todd Bridges.
Okay.
Todd Bridges alone would be enough to keep you busy in retirement. That's for sure. Yeah, I'm not really sure what would be on with that, but I guess it was the age of the spin-off, and anytime you had some kind of premise, in retrospect, it seems like a terrible idea.
Right.
I don't know. Maybe it seemed like a better idea at the time. I'm not sure. We might have to have our crack research team look into the creation of fish and the rationale behind that.
Right.
Maybe I'll make a note for them to look into that.
Maybe they just thought we can get away with calling a sitcom fish.
Yeah, that's an achievement.
Right.
It was a dream of, I don't know, was it Fred Silverman in charge at this time? He had all these big ideas. The first thing, we're going to have a show named after some kind of aquatic creature.
Hey, Fred, we've already got a character on Barney Miller called Fish.
Done.
Who plays him? This guy's like 60, 80 years old.
Yeah.
We're not sure.
Yeah. Can we get 3 women in bikinis on the show? Yeah, I mean, maybe they were also trying to get some of that urban sitcom thing going on.
Yeah.
And culture clashing was
Right.
maybe big at the time, too, with like Chico and the Man and things like this. Maybe that's what they were going for, but
Yeah.
I'm only speculating. I'm not a expert fishologist either, unfortunately. I'm more of a Hal Lindenologist than
Right.
a fishologist.
So you might not know the answer to this. Did Abe Vigoda ever play a vampire?
What? How did that? I wasn't expecting that.
Maybe it was the werewolf influence, but he just had a... or maybe it's... I've been listening to too much Gilbert Gottfried's podcast.
Abe Vigoda is a vampire.
Yes.
I like the idea. Maybe in a Mel Brooks movie or
Just
something.
talking very slowly.
Yeah. Abe Vigoda.
Or Frankenstein's monster. You
Yeah.
know, any of the monsters.
Right. I like.
Because he looks a little bit like Boris Karloff.
Yeah. Yeah. This is an intriguing premise.
Yeah.
I like this. Like, I could see him doing like a roadshow version of Dracula, starring Abe Vigoda as Count Dracula.
Maybe not the, the sexy Dracula.
No,
But
the more weathered Dracula.
I want to suck your blood.
Yeah.
Whatever.
Yeah.
Okay. I gotta suck more blood.
If I gotta suck your blood, I'll suck your blood.
Yeah.
I would have paid to see that.
Yeah.
Would have been a smash hit all around the country.
Well, maybe Hal Linden could have played the sexy vampire.
Oh, well, there you go.
Do vampires have mustaches?
Well, they...
Not your traditional Dracula.
You think, actually, now that I think about it, I'm surprised more vampires don't have mustaches because they can't look in the mirror to shave themselves.
Right.
So you'd think they'd have more facial hair rather than less. So
Yeah.
maybe there's something in their makeup that doesn't allow that to happen. What about when Frank Langella was Dracula? He of all people would have had a mustache, I would think.
Maybe.
I don't think he did.
I don't think so.
Huh.
I don't know. I think in the Bram Stoker's Dracula, Gary Oldman had a facial hair before he became the vampire,
Okay,
when he was still Vlad the Impaler.
right. So an impaler can have a mustache.
Yeah. And I'm probably in other things I've seen vampires with mustaches. I think maybe in that original Buffy movie, Pee Wee Herman as a goatee or something.
Right.
But in your Dracula movies, I don't think so.
No, certainly not in the classic ones that I can think of.
Maybe
You think?
Christopher Lee, maybe?
Yeah, you could see Vincent Price playing Dracula with a mustache. I don't think he did.
Right, yeah.
You know who would have made a good suave Dracula is Ron Glass. I mean,
yeah.
Talk about a guy with a mustache.
Yeah. I know that I was thinking not too long ago that the facial hair category, the baddies, was going to be a little weak this season.
Ooh,
and
well.
then we hit Barney Miller.
Say that no more. Yeah. I think there's a theme here, like, this is the brilliance of Danny Arnold. He's like, well, if we lose somebody, one of our deadpan, we got a backup. If we lose one of our mustaches, we got a backup. He had, like,
Maybe.
significant overlap for everybody in the cast.
Yeah. If we lose a screaming child.
Yeah, I think we hear the anguished yell of one of the vampire's victims in the background, folks.
Right. Yeah, he was. If we lose a really old guy, we'll get a middle-aged guy.
Yeah.
It's
close
Landisberg.
Yeah, well, those are interesting points to consider.
Oh yeah.
One thing I wanted to bring up is that one thing that comes up time and again when you read or hear any discussion of Barney Miller, so we should probably mention here is that cops, real life cops, loved the show, and time and again, when they did surveys of actual policemen, they would describe Barney Miller as the most realistic show on TV, more so than even like a lot of the dramas. And I think they liked the lack of flashiness, the fact that they showed sort of like the as opposed to showing car chases and things like that.
Right.
It may shock you to think that I don't think cops thought Starsky and Hutch was the most realistic cop show on TV, but they liked the working man aspect of it, like kind of in touch with the people. And I think that's something that the show definitely tries to capture. And we kind of talked about just sort of that, and like in the issues, like it's not a preachy show, but they did touch on a lot of social issues. I mean, werewolfism isn't necessarily one of the bigger ones at the time, but they did get into other social issues in the show. And it's almost always like kind of everybody is against the system. Mm-hmm. There's these bigger forces, which, again, you could kind of see that's kind of a more subtle sort of liberal bent to things. More humanist way of looking at things.
Right. I've never heard David Simon say it, but I mean, I'm sure Barney Miller was an influence on The Wire. Just based on that, it's the regular cop trying to deal with the institutions.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would love to hear David Simon's take on Barney Miller.
I bet he loved it.
I'll bet he has a great, he probably does have a great take on that show. And one of the people I've seen this multiple times that points it out is another one of our favorites, Dennis Farina. Was, whenever somebody would ask him, like, what TV gets right about cops and what doesn't get right, and Dennis Farina was a former cop himself, he'd say Barney Miller, hands down, was, like, the most realistic.
Just his appreciation of a good mustache.
Oh, that alone.
Yeah. At least two cops in every precinct have a good mustache.
What about the way they dealt with crime and like and police, social? No. Mustaches.
Mustaches. When I saw Hal Linden that first time, I got a good mustache, but I wanted his mustache on top of my mustache.
Well, Hal Linden probably had one of the more influential mustaches of the era. I believe at the time he was kind of considered like a thinking man's sex symbol, I believe. Oh. And we'll have to put some of these on the playlist. As a reminder, check out our official YouTube channel for episode-specific playlists after each episode.
Yep.
Have you ever seen he did segments called like FYI, FYIQ or something like that? He did these little like interstitial segments that would show up on ABC.
I think.
And he had like a news magazine show I think he hosted too.
Animals. I saw that listed.
Oh, wow.
It was one of his educational shows.
Yeah.
And that sounds familiar.
Yeah.
Like maybe I remember that disrupting the cartoons on Saturday.
You weren't down with that at the time?
Probably not. I mean, animals. I like animals, but yeah. Right, and something called FYI and something or whatever.
Yeah.
Or FYIQ, you said?
Yeah. I'm not sure off the top of my head, but I think he did I think there were interstitial segments, and I think on Saturday mornings too, aimed at kids.
Yeah.
Another part of the rich, distinguished career of Hal Linden.
Yeah. Song and dance man.
Yeah. It was a very talented cast on Barney Miller, and that to me is maybe the number one appeal of the show is just how fun it is to watch these characters and these actors doing their thing.
Yeah.
And you kind of touched on earlier, but one of the great theme songs in TV history, I think.
Oh yeah.
The bass line at the beginning and.
Yeah. That's definitely, that category is going to be tight in the baddies, too.
Oh, it always is. It always is. Yeah, I kind of get stressed out. We're getting closer and closer to baddie season, as you know, and
I know.
That's one of the ones that keeps me up at night, is the theme song category every year. It doesn't get any easier.
No.
But what a problem to have.
Yeah.
That Barney Miller theme song is one of the more distinctive ones of the era, for sure.
Yeah. Although, I don't know if the same people did the Night Court one, but that's what's in my head a little more because I know it more.
And again,
and they're similar.
Yeah, I mean, I think one of my favorite things that you've brought up is this connection, which I didn't really make it, but some of the talent was the same. Mm-hmm. Easily, the shows could exist in the same universe, and the theme songs are vaguely similar.
Yeah.
I mean, I could definitely see that connection. I never made it before, actually, but definitely a dream crossover that will never be. But
no.
Barney Miller and Night Court. I think they could have made that work.
I think so. I would have liked to see Dan Fielding, parade into that
Yes.
squad room.
Right. And just kind of...
Those guys wouldn't have put up with him at all.
Right. With sort of like disdain looking around and just wanting to get out of there as soon as possible.
Like touching things.
Right. Yeah.
Like they were dirty. And
Right. Yep. And easily, you could see, one of them making an appearance in before Judge Harold Stone.
Yeah. We're going to have to talk about Night Court at some point.
Yeah, I think we are. I think we've got a long list of things brought up by this episode, including classic monsters, Iron Man, and Night Court. So do we want to talk about the Mummy or the Creature from the Black Lagoon before we close?
No, I don't really see any connection there.
No.
I mean, I guess if we follow my premise that Abe Vigoda looks a little bit like Boris Karloff, then I guess he could have played the Mummy.
Yeah, I guess. Well, there's got to be a joke or two in there somewhere. But I would agree with that. Maybe it would be easier if maybe we slide Hal Linden into the Count Dracula and Abe Vigoda as the Mummy. And Max Scale is Frankenstein's monster. Yeah.
And we already have a werewolf.
Yeah. All right. Well, that's a pretty good. We'll have to find something for Harris though. He's too dapper to be left out, but he's too dapper to be like the Creature from the Black Lagoon. I mean, the guy doesn't have any threads at all.
I mean, could you have Dracula and Blackula in the same movie?
I'd like to find out.
I don't want to just cast him because he's black though. I want him to have his own thing.
It's a little reductive maybe to have him be Blackula, but if we have him be Dracula, what do you do with Hal Linden? Maybe if Hal Linden be Iron Man takes on the classic monsters.
Yeah, that could happen too.
Yeah.
Most of those exist in the Marvel universe.
Yeah.
So, why not?
Right. Werewolf by Night meets Tomb of Dracula.
By the way, the Marvel universe Dracula has facial hair.
Ah, well, that's interesting. Yes.
I can't remember if he has a full goatee or just a Van Dyke. But
I don't either. But what if Ron Glass was Blade, the vampire hunter?
Oh, that would be pretty cool.
All right, it's coming together, folks.
Yeah.
Look for news of our future Kickstarter coming soon. But Oh, and one thing you said, season 1. You may know this already, but the show definitely changed a lot after season 1. When it first started, it was about kind of splitting time between Barney's home life and the precinct, and you saw a lot more of his. I think it was Barbara Barry. I get some of my Barbara's mixed up sometime, but she was his wife, and then I think they went through marital troubles, but eventually they just phased that out totally and kept it almost exclusively the police side. But some of those early episodes, it's a little startling to see Barney going home and talking to his wife, and it just doesn't really seem in place.
Yeah, I wouldn't have even thought he was married.
Yeah, you think he's married to the job, right?
Yeah,
and maybe that's part of Barney's problem. But yeah, that's something to look for as you kind of dig into season 1. The complete series is out on DVD, thanks to Shout Factory, and I think it's been off and on in syndication. Well, I guess mostly off, but I think the digital subchannels, maybe it's Antenna or Get TV, one of those has it. Like half of it used to be on Hulu. They didn't have the whole series. They had some of it on Hulu, and it's not on Hulu now. And
Crackle, it was...
Yeah, Crackle off and on is like rotated a season or two, but...
And even for purchase from like Amazon and iTunes, a very limited amount. I think the first 2 seasons.
It's a shame. I mean, I think once... The good news is when Shout gets the rights to a series, they actually do something with it, but the bad news is then once they do it, you don't necessarily see it turn up other places. Maybe they'll put it on their streaming thing. I mean, I think the complete set's been out for years now, so... But I don't know if I don't know if they went back and did the individual seasons. Yeah. Because Sony had released a couple of seasons and then just lost interest or whatever, and then Shout took over. So it is available on DVD if you want to see it and circulating on TV. But 8 seasons, it deserves a bigger spot on streaming video, I think.
Yeah. Okay. I'm done. The replacement shift is here.
Yeah.
Be on the lookout for Battle of the Network shows Night Shift.
Yeah. They'll be taking over.
Yeah. And we'll be back for another one next week.
Sounds good. This episode brought to you by Medical Research. We've reduced incidence of lycanthropy and are still working on that pill version of the flu vaccine. This episode also brought to you by the 12th Precinct, home to the best mustaches in the NYPD. This episode also brought to you by the Anti-Tourist Association of New York, trying to make New York a lovable hellhole again. Join us next time for another exciting episode of Battle of the Network Shows. Learn more, leave feedback, and suggest future episodes at battleofthenetworkshows.com. Follow us on Twitter at BatNetShows, and like our Facebook page, facebook.com/Battle of the Network Shows.